All right. All right. We're live. Are you feeling it's a Tuesday where I am and it's cloudy and it's a bit damp? Are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling unmotivated today? Are you feeling like, oh my God, another day? Or my gosh, I'm sorry, however you want to say that. But I have a guest today that's going to dispel all of the darkness, all of the clouds, if there's any clouds in your brain. Her name is Eleni Anastos. Did I say your name right?
Yes, that was very good.
Awesome. You are an author, a speaker, a prosperity coach, a business strategist. Now, you have a lot of business clients and clients that are just individual people. Correct? Am I right?
Correct.
Welcome,
Correct.
by the way. Yeah. So awesome. Let's get started. What and the you're a book. You have a new book out, and it's called My Reinvented Life. And there's a rather interesting story in that book. And I know I've heard the story. We talked once before on a podcast, so I don't want to stop talking. I want to hear you talk now. What is that story that inspired you to write that book, My Reinvented Life?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me back. It's great to be here with you, Chris.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And the catalyst for me writing that book was actually an incredibly traumatic event that literally turned my world upside down.
Right.
From one day to the next. And I'm sure many people can relate to, especially these past 18, 19 months, how our world can change on a dime with no notice, no question.
Right.
And when I was stuck in that mode of, I can't believe this happened. I mean, I was physically hurt. I was every which way emotionally hurt. I was battling a lot of demons, if you will.
Right.
It was a world that I didn't even recognize. And again, I know people can relate because sometimes what worked for you yesterday doesn't work for you today.
Right. Yeah.
And when I was trying to move forward, that's when I felt so stuck. Because I've always been future focused. I could always see the other side. I was always one of those that could see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're always going to make it through to the other side, and I thank God that I inherited that from my mom, that regardless of what happens to us, we're going to keep going. We can find a way.
Right.
But when this event happened to me 10 years ago, at first I couldn't find a way. I felt stuck. I didn't even recognize myself. The quintessential, I was always the pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of gal, and you just forge on. I couldn't. I was so hurt. I was stuck in a victim mode. And when I realized that I couldn't get excited about the future, that scared the hell out of me.
Yes. And you got out of it, though.
Well, it was, yes, because when you're sitting in that, okay, this cannot be the rest of my life.
No.
I was literally like, this cannot be the rest of my life.
Were you at the bottom? I mean, did it feel that way? Like you were like on the floor? I mean, literally on the floor and the bottom, emotionally and every other way.
Yeah, mentally, physically, financially, you name it. And again, I know that a lot of people can relate to that. But because I've always been excited about the future, always being future focused. One of my mom's favorite sayings was, every day you wake up is a chance for a dream to come true. But when I could no longer dream, I could no longer be future focused. Right. That was my wake up call. Like, whoa, I've got to get out of this. I got to do something to kick myself in the ass and get back here. And that's when I knew that, and it was not easy, but everything starts with a decision.
Yes, it does.
It's still a long game, but it all starts with a decision. I knew I had to reinvent my life because the life I had up to that point was just no longer an option.
So you were feeling vulnerable. You needed some renewal. What was the process you went through to get back up, essentially? How did that work in your head there? How did that work?
I'm glad you brought up the word vulnerable, because that was probably one of the biggest lessons for me, to embrace my own vulnerability.
Right.
Because I admit that before that, I kind of used to equate vulnerability with weakness in a sense. And I realized that's absolutely not the case.
No.
Because when we truly embrace our vulnerability, that takes guts. Man, it takes guts to reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
It takes guts to say, I can't do this alone. I don't want to stay where I'm at. Please help me. That's courageous and vulnerable. They're one and the same. So when I realized it's okay that I feel the way that I do, it's okay that I'm hurt, it's okay that I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started reaching out for help and started to pull myself back up. And I literally went through a specific process. And I do talk about it in detail in my book.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really about deciding that I wasn't going to stay where I was at.
Right.
And then I had to have a roadmap. So you decide you're not going to stay where you're at. You figure out where you want to go. And then we have to reverse engineer. How are we going to get there? You know, easier said than done, but we have to be strategic about it.
Can you take us through your process a little bit about that? From being on the bottom to realizing that you were getting better and rising up, so to speak.
Yes. Well, when I accepted that the life that I had up to that point was no longer an option, it was no longer a fit for me. I could not go back. Again, all connected to the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I was equating myself, and I would imagine somebody else can relate to this. When you've done something for so long, for decades, which many of us have, and I've heard so many people say, but it's all I've ever done.
Yeah.
But it's all I've ever done. And many people are in a profession for 20, 30, 40 years. It may be all you've ever done, but please hear me. It's not all that you are.
Right. There's so much more potential in there.
And when you give yourself the credit for like what I did, you know, I wrote down every single one of my accomplishments from elementary school on forward and what I thought were the characteristics or qualities that helped me get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that everyone, I would bet the farm that everyone has a skill set, has experience, has expertise that can be applied in multiple arenas.
Yes. You just don't realize your potential until you really try, and you're forced to do it, really. Right. Once you get to that point where it's like, oh, everything sucks. I mean, use that word.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll just be plain English. You have to get down and just do it and get some kind of renewal process going. And I know that's one of the themes in your book is renewal.
Yes. And I really want to reinforce that can happen at any age. So again, first for me, I looked at what I accomplished, you know, my skill sets, my experience. And then I looked at what makes my heart sing. What do I love doing? Because I think a lot of people don't give themselves credit for what comes to them naturally.
Right.
So like think about, you know, I'm sure there's something that people come to you for that you just do instinctively, innately.
Right.
Well, it's just in your wheelhouse. You know, that's a special skill. And too many people don't give themselves credit for those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to reinforce. So, and I'm making lists, what I've done, what I like to do. And then I'm looking at the overlap. Well, what can that be applied to? Or what other arenas can that be applied to? Mm-hmm. And then I reverse engineer and really want to reinforce with folks that especially when you're venturing into a new arena or you want to do something completely different than what you've done, and it doesn't have to be because of trauma, because I believe with every fiber of my being that purposeful reinvention is without question the catalyst for living your best life.
Well, that's what I did. I was selling cars for 6 years. I was selling cars for 6 years right before I started Chris Jones Media as a video and audio and podcast thing. And it's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't sell cars anymore. It's enough. Because there's never any gratitude. You sell 3. How come you didn't sell 5? You sell 10. How come you didn't sell 15? Whatever. But I love the reinvention, the whole thing, the reinvented life. And that's exactly what everybody can have. if you're stuck somewhere in a place you don't want to be, and maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, a toxic one or whatever, you need to reinvent your life. And I think I just gave out one of the concepts of your book, didn't I?
No, don't you? Well,
Yes, it is. It
then
is.
let me ask you though, when you knew that I'm done with the cars, did you always have the affinity? How did you know that you should be going into Chris Jones Media?
Because I'd done radio in the past, and I had the voice thing going, and I was pretty decent and good at editing video, and I got a lot better, and I just made it all one big thing and decided it was going to be. Then it was right before my 60th birthday. It took a while. Sometimes it takes a while for people, but you know what? I'm sorry. This is real life, and I just got a phone call, and I'm going to ask you another question, and I'm going to let you talk, and I'm going to go off camera for a second, if that's okay with you. Tell me about the gratitude aspect of what you do and what the book is about, and with regards to gratitude. And I'll be right. I'll be listening, but off camera.
Okay, it's all good. Now, gratitude is a huge, huge part of my life. I practice gratitude daily. I write in a gratitude journal, and someone had actually asked me. They called me and said, you say you should always be grateful. So you're grateful that you were hurt? Are you grateful that you were betrayed? No, of course not. And you don't ever have to be grateful that something bad or horrific happened to you, but you can be grateful that you had the strength to persevere. You can be grateful that you were strong enough to make the choice to move forward. And you can be grateful without question for any lessons learned. And sometimes lessons are painful, especially when you learn something about people that maybe you trusted, people that you thought you had a different close relationship with. Things come out. But I'm still grateful when I learn the truth. I'm still grateful when I learn lessons that pull me forward or that I can use forward. And in fact, I'll share a little scenario that I do share in my book where I was at a low point financially.
Yeah.
Was really, struggling. And I live on a peninsula. So there's one way on, one way off. And I'm on the causeway on the bridge coming home and my car's breaking down.
Uh-oh.
And it was like chitty, chitty, bang, bang. Like it would stop, stall. And I started to get nervous and freak out because I knew I only had $11 to my name and 3 cans of beans at that point in time. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And when I started to get upset and freak out a little bit, I immediately went into gratitude, or it was a conscious choice to.
Right.
And I said, I am so grateful for all of this traffic. And I literally said that out loud because that meant people were going slow. So as my car is stalling out, I wasn't going to get hit or rear-ended. I said, I'm so grateful that there's no snow and ice. Yeah. Not that somebody in Florida ever has to worry about, but I kept choosing to look for things that I could be grateful for. And I made it off the bridge. Fortunately, there was a gas station with a mechanic right near the front end of the peninsula. Dropped my car off. I said, I don't know what's wrong. I walked a couple blocks home. And when I'm in my little condo, I just kept focusing on the gratitude.
Right.
I'm so grateful I have shelter. I'm so grateful I'm healthy. I'm so grateful for my vision. I'm on and on and on. They called me and they said, I don't even remember what the actual issue was, but I do remember it was at least $700 worth of repairs. And they said, could we fix it? I said, yeah, sure. Go ahead. I had $11 and 3 cans of beans.
And how did that work out?
Focusing on the gratitude. Right. And I had just started my business. I had already spoken to a few people, but I had nothing closed. And within 1 week, I had over $22,000 in commission.
It's mindset.
Got my car out of hock. And I truly believe that if I was like, oh shit, I only have $11. What am I going to do? I don't have this. I don't have that. If I focused on what I didn't have, I don't believe those clients would have closed with me, because it is mindset. It is the intention. And if we're not grateful for what we have in front of us, If we're not grateful that we're breathing, that we're sitting upright, I don't believe that we're going to get more coming to us unless we appreciate what we already have.
Wow, that is a fantastic story. And it's all about mindset. Be thankful for what you do have and what you can do rather than, oh man, my life sucks. I mean, there's a lot of people in that phrase, in that mindset, and it's hard for them to get out. And it's just tough. Now, I'm going over some of the concepts in your book, and I wrote them down, so I might want to cover all of these. You talk about boundaries. Explain what you mean by boundaries with regards to my reinvented life. What is
Yes. Well, when I think of boundaries, and to me, boundaries should be beneficial to both parties involved.
Right.
And for a long time, I didn't realize that no, N-O, period, could be a complete sentence. And if you keep giving and giving and giving, when you actually had wanted to say no, you think about how like resentment can build.
Right.
And how you're really eroding at your own self-worth because you keep allowing yourself, you're opening yourself up to be taken advantage of. And you have every right to say no. Now, that doesn't mean somebody dear to you comes to you in crisis and needs your help. Of course. I'm talking about the long game. If it's a consistent pattern, whether it's money or your time, and you feel taken advantage of, please understand that no is a complete sentence. And especially with reinvention, because when I shared what I wanted to do, starting my own business in my 50s, there were a lot of people that were, yeah, but you're already in your 50s. You can't do that. And I'm like,
oh man, that is the worst. That is the worst mindset ever. You could be 89. I tell you yesterday, I met up with, in Glens Falls, New York here. I met up with a lady in a coffee shop. She's 89, driving around, doing stuff, running a nonprofit and a couple other things. And it's like, you're never too old to do stuff like that.
No. If you have the desire to be, do, or have anything, then please don't let anybody else put the limits on you. And I think boundaries are really, really important because just like, the backstop at a baseball game, the double lines on the road, boundaries are meant to keep us safe. And if we don't have any boundaries in place, then we end up suffering as well. And then the people that you are trying to help, if you end up resenting them, then that relationship gets eroded.
Yes. And a lot of times it could be your best friend. Yeah. And at some point there has to be a stop giving at some point. One of your concepts too is forgiveness. And that looks like a big one for you.
It's huge. It started with, for me, when I was writing this book, really focusing on, and I had already done a lot of the work to forgive the people that had done me wrong. When I reference the traumatic event I share in the book.
Sure.
In forgiveness, I had to learn that it wasn't about, because sometimes you're not going to hear any remorse. You're not going to hear an apology, but you still have to forgive them to release, the power that it has on you. And that was a tough lesson for me to learn. I remember even my mom telling me as a little kid, I was so upset with something that a friend had done that was hurtful. Right. And she said, you need to forgive her. And I said, but why? She's the one that did the thing that was wrong. And she said, forgiving her is going to help you stop being so angry. I went, oh. So just that release. It doesn't matter if they feel remorse. It doesn't matter if they apologize.
Right.
But the toughest lesson without question was learning how to forgive myself. And I think a lot of people have been there. We should on ourselves. I should have known better. I should have made a different decision. I should have known that was going to happen. I should have seen that coming. We can should all over ourselves when it doesn't serve any useful purpose.
This woman speaks her mind. I love it.
Learning to forgive myself and having grace with myself was the most powerful lesson for me.
There you go. I love that. And also one of your concepts. I'm just going through a bunch of words that you have used in the past. Creation. You're recreating yourself. Is that what that is, or what?
Yeah. Well, I realized going through this process that we're always creating our life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the reality is we are. And again, I'm not talking about something that's happened to you, the pandemic, a traumatic event, or an accident. I'm talking about the long game. You know, month after month, year after year, you're not happy with your results and your circumstances and your environment, then you do have to look in the mirror. So the question is, are you being purposeful in your creation? Are you creating the life you want, or are you creating the life that you don't want?
When you create, all these concepts all relate to each other, don't they? And if you're creating the life you don't want, that means maybe you don't want to do what you're doing. Maybe you don't want to get up and do that 9 to 5 or 6 to 6 or whatever it is. And you should do something else, reinvent your life. This concept is awesome. You also help a lot of business people, don't you?
Yes.
In like you do CEOs and I mean like anybody really, right?
Yes.
And so how does it work from a business standpoint? You're in a company, you're sitting in a room, or I don't know how you Zoom maybe or whatever, but how do you is it really kind of the same ideas as an individual, a business?
It is a similar concept because it all starts with what are the results they want to get. Right. Where do they want to go? And then I love using the term reverse engineering. We have to decide where you want to go and nail that down. Because if you don't have a clear image, what you want for yourself, professionally or personally, or what you want for your business, then nothing's going to happen. You know, like getting into a car and you use GPS, you're not going to get an instruction. You're not going to get the step-by-step to get there. The first thing you do is plug in the final destination. So a lot of people, if they're, and that's part of the work too, that if they are unclear, you got to help them get clear. The clarity on exactly what you want your goals, business-wise, income-wise, personal, whatever it is that you want to improve on, that has to get nailed down first. So then we can cultivate the roadmap that helps you get there.
So using the idea of the GPS destination is perfect because that's exactly what it's just really kind of the same thing. Now, the book came out when? It's called, I have it down on the bottom here. It says My Reinvented Life. When, that came out when? Earlier this summer, I think, right?
It came out in August.
In August. And how's it doing? I think it hit bestseller, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Well, good for you. That is
Thank
awesome. You. That is awesome. Now I have to ask the next question. What's next for Eleni?
Well, I'm so honored and excited to the feedback I've gotten from the book, because I've said from the beginning, my intentions were if even one person gets back up after reading my story and realizes they can begin again, regardless of age or circumstance, it's all worth it. Wow. So I've been speaking to groups. I'm going to continue to do that because I'm very mission driven and I want to inspire people to own their life and to create the one that they want. And I still love working with my clients, you know, doing the business strategy and the private coaching as well. And it's so exciting when you see people like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Like I've helped corporate executives leave corporate and start their own consulting business.
After meeting with you?
Well, they knew that they weren't happy, but they couldn't nail it. They loved their work. But they wanted something more. Yeah,
not fulfilled.
We shouldn't deny ourselves. If you really want something, now we're not going to love 100% of everything and everything that we do. Right. But if something's been pulling at you, tugging at you, there's something more I want to do. There's something else I want to do. Something else I want to have. Then you need to reach out for help and go for it.
Do it. Well, anyway, we could talk for a couple hours and not repeat things, and it would be great. I'm going to have you on again at some point, and we'll maybe when your next book comes out, whenever that is. Is there one in the works? Have you got something else in your head already?
I do have something else in my head, but I'm not going to share it yet.
All right. Well, see, that's enough to have you on again. See, I can do that. I asked you this once before. We were on a podcast earlier this year, but we're going to wrap it up, and I want to ask you what your favorite movie is. What is that?
Oh, immediately came to mind was I think was it A Beautiful Life? Roberto Benigni. He won the Oscar for it.
I don't know the movie, but I have heard of it.
He was brilliant, and the whole movie. I was so enthralled with this movie in his spirit. It was because he had this unbeatable human spirit that talk about circumstance, and he was living full out to the end. And even when he knew his life was ending, that it just how powerful the human spirit can be, regardless again of circumstance. And that's what I truly want for everybody, that we can't be solely defined by our age or external circumstances.
Correct.
Let's take back our lives and create the ones we want.
Isn't this woman awesome? Isn't she awesome? If you had a time machine, I asked you this before too, and you can go back in time and meet with any one person that's not alive, doesn't have to be anybody famous, and to have coffee, who might that person be?
I would love to go back and spend some time with my maternal grandfather. Right. I was raised in my maternal grandparents' home, and he was born in 1893. And the quintessential American success story. They spent a month on a boat. He spent a month on a boat to get here, and landed in Detroit. No money in his pocket, started a business, raised a family. And just to me, the courage it took to do that, the intestinal fortitude, I would love to have been able to talk to him back then when he was right in the middle of doing it as a 18, 19
you can always picture a movie of something like that with time travel. He doesn't really know who you are, but you know who he is, and it's kind of like interesting to think about that. So Eleni, we're going to have you on again at some point when you can talk about the next adventure. In the meantime, can you do this? Live long and prosper, as I say. Oh, look at that. I love it. Love it. And thank you very much for your time today, and continued success. And you're going to sell a bunch more, I know.
Thank you so much for having me on here, Chris.
It's been my pleasure.